A recent survey revealed that 78% of people are worried about their job security in the next recession. And when people are worried about their job and anxious, you can probably guess what happens to their job performance. Motivation and concentration plummet, and anxiety and depression start to rise. And even the ones who don't get laid off, the ones that remain at the company, they experience a 20% drop in performance. So what can you do to deal with the anxiety and worry that comes with potential layoffs? Well, the first thing is you got to get out of survival brain. This is also known as something called amygdala hijack, where the amygdala, the part that's responsible for the fight or flight response in you, stress happens, amygdala goes into fight or flight, and it literally hijacks or shuts down the front of your brain, which is where the rational, logical thinking is. So that stress response truly hijacks your actual thinking. And when you're in that survival brain, amygdala hijack, you've got virtually no chance of making a strong, wise decision. So refrain from any kind of decisions or plans being made until you can get out of this mindset. And you can do that. You can calm your brain by moving your body. Just go out and take a walk or anything that gets your heart rate up for at least 10 or 15 minutes. That's going to flush out so much of that stress from your body and your brain. And then you'll be at that clear-headed, clear-thinking level so that you can then start making a game plan. Next thing to do is draft your team. See, even the possibility of layoffs makes people feel like they're just on their own. So you got to quickly pull together a team of people you can bring around you to support you. I bet you already know the people in your life who are good for situations like this. So lean on them for things like comfort, wisdom, or just to get your mind off of things so you're not just obsessing over this one part of your job or your life. And this is not the time to bring in the know-it-alls, the people that talk too much, that just love to hear the sound of their voice. This is a time for the people who definitely have wisdom and knowledge, but they got to have the insight in order to ask the right questions of you. Third step, make a game plan. If you already have a step-by-step action plan for what you would do if a layoff were to happen, that's going to bring down your anxiety because it's going to give you this sense of control, as opposed to if the layoffs, the rumors start to happen and you really have no idea what you would do if it actually came to the worst case scenario. That means your anxiety is going to go through the roof, even higher than it already is. Because see, anxiety is trying to help us. It's trying to warn us about things that it thinks are going to literally kill us. Now, a layoff won't literally kill us, but anxiety doesn't know that. It really thinks it's a major, major threat. And financially, it is. So if anxiety thinks that if this layoff happens, we really don't have a game plan, anxiety is going to make you feel worse in order to get your attention. And it wants your attention so that you'll actually turn that attention toward making a plan. So it thinks if I can just get you to worry enough about these potential layoffs, you'll start to figure out some contingency plans. But if you'll go ahead and make a plan, get those step-by-step action points that you would take, make that before the rumors ever start hitting. Make that before the stress of potential layoffs start to affect you. Definitely make it before the layoffs actually happen. Then the anxiety, it'll still be there, but it'll know that you already have this roadmap. You've already planned this out. You have the support team. So anxiety will feel like it doesn't have to work as hard to get your attention because it thinks at least you got some semblance of control over what's about to come. And one of the first places I learned this was my very first job out of college. I was literally the only person they had hired in, say, 2 or 3 years, because all through those years they had been making cutbacks. And so everybody who still remained in that job, they were all just waiting for the next axe to fall. They had essentially gone into freeze mode, just hoping they wouldn't be next. So all of a sudden I come on board as the first new person in a long time, and they're kind of looking at me like, what's happening here? Why are you coming in? It's usually people going out. And of course, I had no idea how to explain that from the big picture level. I just knew that I'd been given a job, but I started just listening to their stories. I started asking them like, well, what have you been doing the last couple of years to maybe prepare for you being in the next round of cuts? And so many of the people told me they had this plan. They would take me through their steps of what they would do. Some of it included some, relatively minor action steps. They didn't feel like they needed to make drastic changes, but other people, their plan had some pretty big steps, moving to a different city, for example, or even jumping in to an entirely different industry. But the ones that had the most peace, I remember this so clearly, the ones that had the most peace were the ones that saw a potential layoff as an opportunity. Maybe they had these dreams they wanted to chase, or maybe they had a totally different set of job skills that they had in them. They just haven't had a chance to develop it yet. And they thought, well, if I get laid off, maybe that's my sign that this door is now open to try something new. Maybe it means something new, something exciting that has now opened up that's now been made possible that wasn't before. So those were the people that fascinated me, and listening to those stories and really seeing the expressions on their face, they had a peace about them that the other people just didn't have. So that was one of the times in my life where I wasn't even a therapist yet, but I could really see beneath the surface and say, okay, so there's a different level of planning and a different level of a mindset that we can all get to in order to go through these struggles and not have to suffer so much as we go through them. So for your game plan, maybe it's something simple like just updating your resume. Or maybe you start making a list of people in your network circle. Maybe you haven't talked to them in a while. Maybe you've never even met them, but a list of people that you could reach out to in the event of a layoff, just to have some folks that, okay, I know who I'm going to get into contact with. Basically the network connections. And then finally, any of these steps that you put on the paper that you could take, even if you don't end up having to take them, having them there on that paper is going to calm some of those thoughts in your brain. You know, those thoughts that just swirl around our head like a tornado, and they just keep getting louder and louder and louder, overthinking on them. Well, once we write down a plan on our paper, all of a sudden those voices start to come down. Those what if this happens, what if that happens? Well, the answer to those what if questions is right here in your game plan. And speaking of those thoughts, that leads us to step 4, which is put a spotlight on those major thoughts, or what I call those voices in your head. Let's put a spotlight on them. Let's take 60 seconds. Let's close our eyes. Let's actually listen to those thoughts. The what if this happens? All those thoughts that you can't seem to get out of your brain that are trying to get your attention, and they just swirl and swirl. But let's actually put the spotlight on them and listen to them on purpose. Because if we try to just get them to shut up, they're really only going to get worse. Because again, they're part of anxiety, so they think they're trying to be helpful. And they really are trying, but they're just not really helping when all we can think about is those thoughts. The way to get them to calm down is to listen to them. It's just like, let's say, a crying baby. If we ignore a crying baby, it's probably going to cry louder. But if we come to the baby and we hold the baby close and we listen to the crying and we hear the baby out and really just, I don't know, let it get it out of its system, all of a sudden we realize the crying starts to calm down some. Same with our thoughts. So 60 seconds at a time. You don't have to sit with them long, but just closing our eyes, let them say whatever it is they want to say, and do it a few times, taking breaks in between. But you'll start to notice that the air kind of gets let out of their balloon, so to speak. The pressure that comes with those thoughts starts to just get a little lighter. And if you do that a few times, start to figure out what are the top 2 or 3 thoughts that keep on playing in my head. Write those down. What are those top 2 or 3 thoughts? Then once you've written down the thoughts, label them. So let's say one of them is this what if thought of, what if I go broke? Well, that means that's fear. So you can write the thought and write fear next to it, and right there it is on the paper. Another big one besides fear that you can label the thoughts, shame. Shame comes up a lot in our thinking in these kinds of stressful moments. So example of a shame thought would be, well, I'm not a good enough employee. I'm definitely going to get cut. I'm terrible. Something in that realm of really knocking yourself down or beating yourself up about just your value as an employee or even as a person. So if that's one of your thoughts, write that down and write shame next to it. That thought itself, once it's on the paper, it tends to lose power over you, because when it lives in your head, it just takes up so much space and it seems like this huge ocean wave crashing over you. But when it gets onto a sheet of paper and it's something that you wrote with your hand, something happens in your head and you realize, oh yeah, this is just a thought. I'm bigger than this thing. I mean, here it is on this paper. It's manageable. It's still maybe a real concern, but it's not as intimidating as it used to be. That leads us to our next step, which is know your name. And I don't mean the name your parents gave you. I mean the thing you identify yourself as. The thing maybe is your job. In fact, 55% of people identify themselves with their job. So in other words, if they lose their job, they really don't know who they are. They've lost their name. And if you think about it, what's one of the first things we end up telling people when we meet them for the first time? We tell them our name, and then we tell them our job. We tell them what we do. So our job is so often so closely entangled with our identity. And that works until it doesn't. It reminds me of this scene in Spider-Man Homecoming when Spider-Man messed up and Iron Man's mad at him. So Iron Man says, all right, I'm taking your suit away from you. I'm taking the Spider-Man suit away. And his response to Iron Man is, please don't take this suit. I'm nothing without this suit. And when I first saw that scene, I thought, oh my gosh, this is all of us. And in this case with the job, we think the layoff is going to make us nothing. If I get my job taken from me, I will feel like I am nothing. I am a nobody. And man, that's a dark place to be. But the good news is that thought that if I lose my job, I'm a nobody, or without this position, I'm a nobody, that's just a straight up lie. Your identity and your value are not tied to your job. And your significance has nothing to do with your employment. That moves us to our next step, which is fill your brain with truth. So maybe you don't really know who you are separate from your job. This is the perfect time to start taking that journey. Start figuring out, who am I? What are my skills? What are my passions? What are my prior experiences that have led me to this point? What have I even been put on this earth for in the first place? These are things you need to start digging through so that you've got a solid foundation, so that no matter what happens circumstantially to your job or anything else, you have this rock solid foundation and you're going to hold strong through whatever comes. Build a habit of gently pulling your brain back to thoughts that are true and thoughts that give you hope and motivation. For example, decide that whatever happens, life happens for me, not to me, because I'm not a victim, I'm an overcomer. And choose the perspective of seeing whatever happens with your job, see that as an opportunity. Ask yourself this question: what is this new development that I didn't want, that I didn't really ask for, but it's here? So what does this make possible that wasn't before? On the flip side of things, worries and fears about potential layoffs also harm the company and the organization itself. And specifically, the younger workers in an organization are more likely to experience this type of layoff anxiety. So companies have to invest resources in preparing all their employees for potential layoffs or other organizational changes that are going to eventually come. I work with executives on leadership and management strategies, and here are some of the suggestions I give them on how to equip their employees to deal with stress and change. Number one is proactive resilience training. Don't wait until the layoff rumors start to happen. Don't wait until the downturns come. Act in a position of strength. When times are good, that's the time to start building the strength and the resilience and the toughness in your employees so that when the tough times come, they're already equipped. Number two is frequent, open communication. You got to let people in the process. You got to send out frequent updates of the health of the organization, of how things really are going. Also, you got to be willing to answer questions about how decisions get made. The research shows that the employees who are able to ask questions and really do feel like they got legitimate answers, you don't have to tell them everything, but the people who feel like they can ask questions and get faithful answers, they feel more stable in their job, they feel more loyal to their job, and they're more productive. Number three is help employees build individual strength and then build trust with each other. A team that believes in each other and really trusts each other, they can withstand almost anything. But it's not going to be fully optimized between two people until each individual works out their own stuff, brings out the strength, brings out the resilience that's already in them, just needs to be developed more. And then to clear out some of those unhealthy thought patterns. So give equal opportunities for that individual work and equal opportunities for that team building, that trust between people that think differently from each other, people that maybe have different age gaps from each other. Whatever the differences may be, the trust has got to be there. And once that trust is there, wow, then the sky's the limit. And number four is the leader of the organization has got to get healthy themselves. Because the organization, it's simply a mirror for its leader. The organization is going to reflect whatever and whoever you are as the leader. If you as a leader are healthy, your people are going to move that direction too. But whatever unhealthy parts of you are still there, they're going to replicate themselves in your employees and in your teams. This is obviously just the tip of the iceberg of this topic, and I hope it's been helpful to you to at least get some thinking started in this area. And if you want more, I have videos, resources, workshops in this area, and so many more, and I hope those are of value to you as well.